We are going to talk about graphing linear equations using x and y intercepts. And we're also going to talk about vertical and horizontal lines and what their equations look like. So there's three types of lines. There's skewed lines that are at an angle. They have both an x and a y in the equation. Y equals 3x plus 1 is an example, or 2x plus y equals 8. They have both variables, so in order to find and graph it, we put in an x and find the y, and we plot those points, something we did last semester. Vertical lines, vertical is straight up and down, have an equation, x equals a number. So the line x equals 2 represents all the points that have an x value of 2. And so that would be 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, all of the x values, -1, or 2, -1, 2, -2, and so on. And so all the points that have x values of a 2 make a vertical line. Our horizontal lines, horizontal is left to right, are y equals a number. So if I have y equals -3, we have points like 0, -3, 1, -3, 2, -3, 3, -3, -1, -3, -2, -3. And all these points have a y value of -3, and they make a horizontal line. So our x-intercepts, an x-intercept is where the graph crosses or intersects or intercepts the x-axis. Okay, my line got a little long here, so it's where it crosses or intersects the x-axis. So the y-intercept is where the line or where the graph crosses or intercepts the y-axis. If you play football, an interception is when the other team takes the ball, the other team grabs the ball, so the x-intercept is where that line hits the x-intercept, it intercepts that. So we're going to look at some graphs and identify the x-intercepts. So graph number 1 we have here. Okay, remember the x-axis is the horizontal axis, and the y-intercept, we have the point here. This point is 3, 0, and so my x-intercept is 3. The coordinates of the x-intercept will always be the x value, the number, 0. Now the graph here, this parabola, has two x-intercepts. It has one here and here. That's where it's crossing the x-axis. So it has the point -1, 0 and the point 2, 0. So it has x-intercepts of -1 and 2. We don't put parentheses around that. Those are two separate points. You might see it written with a curly brace, brackets like that, but not parentheses, because parentheses mean an ordered pair. And the ordered pair for this point is 2, 0 and -1, 0. Number 3, where does it cross this x-axis? Well, it doesn't cross the x-axis at all, so this has no x-intercept, or none. And then number 4 crosses over here at -2, 0, so the x-intercept is -2. So the coordinates of the x-intercept will always be x, 0. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. The y is our vertical axis here. So this line here crosses at 0, -4. Therefore, the y-intercept is -4. My parabola here, This parabola only touches the y-axis one time at -3, -3, and that's the y value, so it's 0, -3, because the x value on the y-axis is 0. Number 3, my graph touches up here at +3, and so that's 0, 3. So this y-intercept for number 2 is -3. The y-intercept for number 3 is +3. And looking at number 4, this vertical line doesn't touch the y-axis at all, so there is no y-intercept. And notice that all of my points on the x-intercepts had y values of 0, and the x was defined. And here, my y-intercept has x values of 0, and the y has a number. So the coordinates of the y-intercept will always be 0, y, or comma the number. So let's graph some of these equations. The vertical and horizontal equations. Remember that vertical is x equals a number. I don't know what just happened. What the heck? And horizontal is y equals a number. Horizontal is left to right. Vertical is up and down. So when we look at this, it says y equals 3. So I'm going to put a point on the graph at +3. And if you think about it, it doesn't really make sense to draw a vertical line here. We wouldn't see anything. It would be the axis. And so our horizontal line are all the points that have y values of +3. And those are points like 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3. They don't change vertically, or the y value doesn't change, therefore it's a horizontal line. For x equals -4, we have 1, 2, 3, -4. And again, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to really see anything if you draw a line across the axis. We want to go up and down. All these points have x values of -4. Now the y equals 0 is tricky. Right, this is where we really have to remember which way it goes, because the line y equals 0 is our x-axis. All of the points on the x-axis have a y value of 0. And when it's equal to 0 is the only time you're going to have one of the axes as your entire line. X equals +2. Again, x equals the vertical line. All of these points have an x value of 2. And x equals 30, well, we're just going to write 30 instead of making lots of lines there. And again, is a vertical line where all of the x values are 30. Okay, so back to those two facts we talked about. The coordinates of an x-intercept will always be x, 0. And the coordinates of the y-intercept will always be 0, y. And we can use that information to graph lines and by finding the intercepts, because a line only needs 2 points to connect to make it. So if I find the x-intercept and I find the y-intercept, then I can plot those 2 points and graph it. So here we have some equations to graph. We have 3x minus y equals 5. And so in order to plug in for the x-intercept, if it's x, 0, we're going to plug in 0 for y. We want to be solving for x when we want the x-intercept. We should be solving for y when we want the y-intercept. So if I have 3x minus 0 equals 5. 3x minus 0 is just 3x equals 5. And remember, to get rid of multiplication, we're going to divide by 3. and x is 5/3. And then to find the y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for x. Okay, so I'm going to take 0 and plug it into the x of the equation. 3 times 0 minus y equals 5. And that's 0 minus y equals 5. Negative y equals 5. And remember, that means we have to change the sign. So we divide by -1, and y equals -5. So my x-intercept is 5/3, 0. And my y-intercept is 0, -5. And we're going to graph those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now 5/3 is 1 2/3. Okay, we're going to want that as a fraction when we put it on a graph. So I have my y-intercept here. I'm going to put that in red. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, -5. And then my x-intercept, I'm going to put it in blue. 1 2/3, a little bit more than halfway. And then we're going to connect it. Okay, I should always have a point on the x-axis and a point on the y-axis. And I'm connecting those because I'm connecting the 2 points where it crosses the axis. I should never have just one point when I'm graphing using this method. Okay, let's look at number 2. -3/4 x plus 2y equals 9. I get, remember it's x, 0. So I'm plugging in 0 for the y. So we have -3/4 x plus 2 times 0 equals 9. I should always have x left in my equation when I'm solving for the x-intercept. So -3/4 x equals 9 because 2 times 0 is 0. And remember, when we have a coefficient that is a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by -4/3. And I can multiply this fraction 2 ways. I can go straight across. I get -36/3, which is -12. Or I can use cross-canceling because 3 divided by 3 is 1 and 9 divided by 3 is 3. And 3 times -4 is -12. I get the same answer. Those cancel. So x is -12. -12, 0 is my x-intercept. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We'll put that point on there. For my y-intercept, it's 0, y. So we're going to plug 0 in for x. So -3/4 times 0 plus 2y equals 9. That's 2y equals 9 because 3/4 times 0 was just 0. Divided by 2, and y is 9/2 or 4½. So we have 0, 4½. So we'll put that point 0, 4½, in between 4 and 5 on my y-axis. And then I connect my 2 points. Okay. Now number 3 actually looks a little bit different than the rest of them, but we do it the same way. If I want to find the x-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for y. So 0 equals 2x plus 5. And I'm going to solve this, so I need to move the 5 to the other side. I get -5 equals 2x. We'll divide by 2, and x equals -5/2, which is -2.5. So -2.5, 0. And to find my y-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So y equals 2 times 0 plus 5. Y equals 0 plus 5, so y is 5. So 0, 5 is the y-intercept. So we have 0, 5, and negative 2.5, 0, so that's about there. Okay, notice I have a point on the x-axis, a point on the y-axis, and now I'm connecting them. The biggest mistake students make with the x and y-intercepts is they put them together as one point, and then they don't know how to draw the line. So you want to make sure you have one point on each axis. Make sure you're graphing it correctly. And that is your x and y-intercepts graphing.